And if I remember, you're off to Brazil.
Yeah, no, because you're mentioning about. I mean, I suppose the difference in times, isn't it? But we also have, sometimes these things appear that you're like, oh, maybe there are people that are still interested in a certain kind of training or experience, and so I'm off to Brazil now, and I'm gonna teach a seminar at the Senseis dojo from my friend Leo, and Leo Senseis has their fully functioning everyday training dojo in São Paulo, and via that I'm doing a calligraphy workshop, a shodo workshop in a big cultural center in São Paulo called SESC, and they have several units, but I'm doing in a pretty major one in São Paulo. So it clearly is, and it's going to be a whole day of like practicing enso, and which is a very, very traditional practice. So I think there's definitely people still interested in those things.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll go well. And keep us posted.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Now we've moved on to the alcohol. It loosens the tongue. We were on the pitch, I think we're talking about, but I think the theme is basically commercial considerations and artistic authenticity, I suppose. I think, even if you run with that one, I mean, and I suppose uses some of your own musical background as well, much as Cathy's is often mentioned. Where do we place ourselves, I suppose, and not only where do we place ourselves, but how?
We were laughing when you went upstairs to change the stuff for the camera, and I said, well, if I knew, I wouldn't be in this position, if I was a marketing genius, I probably wouldn't be doing Aikido, or something like, or so. I think one is for it's clearly we can't do a generalized pitch for the art, because I think, let's face it, a lot of the stuff you see it now, I wouldn't call it Aikido anymore, because I think the level has degenerated to such an extent that I don't consider most of what's out there Aikido. So leaving that aside, like, I think is what in our case, what do we have to offer? Which is the intensity of our training, the intensity of our tuition, which is very individualized. People go to these seminars and you get this one-size-fits-all instructions, which gets perpetuated by the Japanese in the headquarters and everywhere else they go. And so we clearly don't work like that, because people get individualized attention, even in a group setting, And of course we have our weapons training, and there's Iaido involved as well. So I think it would be the case that in our situation, these are the things we have to offer, and the expertise we have in that. In our dojo we have zazen as well, but I think recently I saw two. Well, one is it's a video that a friend of mine gave this interview. He's a historian of judo and jiu-jitsu in Brazil, and I've actually been in his podcast talking about shodo, Japanese calligraphy, and he's an amazing researcher of judo and jiu-jitsu, and he just recorded an episode about the introduction of Aikido in Brazil, and it's great, you know, because he's looking from the outside as a historian. Yes, he's a martial artist, but he's not an Aikidoka, so he can look a bit more detached from it. And at the end, he did say that, and I was like, I think there's a problem to be solved, which is what Aikido does and what Aikido is good at. And people that do Aikido will have to figure it out. Because it's like the other arts kind of found their little thing that they are good at, you know, or they say they're specialized at, and they just hammer that through, you know. So, like the whole BJJ, you know, craze that we had, you know, that's serious like business skills that the Gracie had to really sell their practice and sell their art. And now they're trying to sell it again because it's running out. The pitch of, you know, you can fight everyone, anyone, all times, and win all the time is running out. One, because society doesn't allow that anymore. They can't sell a person that fights on the streets anymore because you go to jail. You know, that's basically it. You know, I saw Rickson Gracie, you know, one of the greatest fighters of all time, saying, I can't tell my students anymore to go and have a fight in a nightclub and defend the honor of your girlfriend. I can't say that anymore because my guy is going to go to jail if he does that with his jiu-jitsu skills. You know, so they are already trying, and when you see the Gracies now talking about longevity and blah, 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 and a practice for your whole life, and you take the words BJJ out of it, you could be talking about Aikido, the narrative that Aikido created for itself is basically the same narrative, because they can't do that anymore, and they realize they lose a lot of people for that competitive side. It's just that they are still getting a lot of numbers, so for now it's okay. But in the long run, we know everything has its peak and will change.
But that's interesting, though, isn't it? That all of these martial arts to establish themselves had a key moment or a key period, if you want. So there's is it Harrison, I think, is an English writer, and the old question, the striking or grappling, which is what's become the cage fighting stuff, and he's going back, I think, to Edwardian or possibly even Victorian era when he was in Japan, and that was also the period where judo was becoming judo, from the grappling stuff. Kitoryu, I think, was one of the main things, but people that art disappeared as far as I know. It doesn't exist. It became judo, or judo came along with much of what it had, plus other stuff, like a lot of them, and the word is the dangerous stuff is taken out, meaning the stuff that you kill people with is taken out, and they've left the stuff that only maims, so it's already sort of improved in that respect. But why did judo do well and the other stuff, the old koryu, not continue? Because all the best athletes, all the best martial artists went there. Why did they go there? There was a pitch, if you want to call it that, and it's so you had to show the credibility of your system, and then the karate schools that arrived from Okinawa, they had to become Japanese in terms of integration, I suppose is the word. It had to fit the society it's going to live with. And so its presentation had to be changed, and its longevity had to be changed. But and then how the art evolved, I really don't know enough. So the technical side I'll leave aside. But they made a reputation for themselves. I've heard mixed stuff, that bad reputations as well. But I wouldn't be surprised. We're talking the 20s and 30s in a very militaristic Japan. So. The softly approach is going to work, even if they were softly, which they weren't, and it wasn't the thing. But what their thing was that they proved themselves and they show themselves that way.
Yeah.
And we get a bad rap for that coming into now. But the thing is, you don't want to end up in jail. Then you've got the other side that says, well, you're not going to end up in jail because you guys can't do anything anyway. So, by the by, that most of the people who train and don't really want to get into fights. They don't really want to do that. They would have gone either into other types of systems that were more immediately close to that stuff, like boxing and contact karate, for example, or they've done that and they've moved on to something else. And also, these are, what I'm saying is not new. I'm not really inventing the wheel here, but what I can say, which I think is very, very important, is people work. Most people have got a career or a job or a life, and they've got a life to get on with, and they want to devote some of their time to training. Some of them want to devote a considerable amount of their time training, but the days where it's full time, the days where you can really explore and dig in and study in that way, they don't really exist anymore. And well, maybe certain circumstances that can be created with the right kind of person. So when you pitch yourselves, what are you saying? Come here 2 times a week, and you're gonna be what is the corporate message of Aikido is spiritual and harmonious and stuff, and that as though that is easy to attain, as combative systems are easier to attain. The question of things like harmony, mind, body, spirit, are so deep rooted in Eastern tradition, and that is actually not completely alien to Western tradition either. It's just that our modern society is kind of shaken that up a little bit, but the joke of it. You guys know I've been writing about the Zen chapter in my book, and I refer to Michael Palin of Monty Python background, and he's got his voiceover, and it's hilarious. There he is, he's sitting. And this is a full-blown, probably 500-600-year-old temple, a monastery. And they're all lined up, and he's there, and sort of teasing in a way, in that very understated way that he's so good at. Forget all that, let it all go, just be, So that's a little wink, obviously, but he's not being rude either, because it's also true. The trouble is, just be in the moment. All these marketing companies, blue sky thinking, that's a term that also comes from the Zen rule.
T-shirt slogans.
They become catchphrases. You go to business. I'm going back a bit here, but for my own period in the corporate world, a long time ago, they're teaching you these things that I'm talking about, team building through them and stuff like that. But it's shallow. It's incredibly shallow, and they don't actually really grasp what it really means. And no questions are asked that these monks, they dedicate their lives, no different from the Franciscans. What is that, of Assisi, isn't it? The monastic life. The one that I wrote about silence, is, I think, can't remember the sect, the school, and it's like the no willing to compromise in this monastery. I think it's in either Switzerland or in the Alps in France. Doesn't matter. You're up in an isolated area. They're locked in a room, and they struggle day in and day out. In fact, some of the outsiders who go and give it a go, they don't last more than a couple of days. They can't live with the weight of themselves, of their own inner world, if you want. They can't live with it. That's the Western system. The Eastern system is no different, just a different flavour, I guess. But you go onto a website and come and join and train, and one day a week from 7:30 to 9:30,
you become one with the universe.
I think it's really, at least for me, I find it really difficult to explain to people what Aikido is.
Because you can't.
Yeah, it's, well,
I can't.
I can't. You know, so I end up saying kind of, I don't know, you know, and this is to people that have never heard of it, and I kind of have to just say, oh, it's a martial art. I suppose it's like, can be a bit like judo. Like, I basically don't know how to explain it. And I was also thinking about this. We had a lady come to try Aikido. I think it was like more than a year ago now. And she said, we asked her, what made you interested in Aikido? And she said, I read about it in a book about mindfulness, and the author was saying that Aikido is a good way to, I can't remember exactly what it was she said. To practice mindfulness, like right? Which I don't think is wrong. But she obviously had a very fixed idea about what that was.
Not unusual.
And we were, she came, she was training, and then she decided to try the weapons class, which is called weapons. We don't call it anything else. It's called weapons.
So wooden instruments that we...
Mindfulness training.
Yeah. and Ivan was teaching, and it was a Joe class. And then afterwards, she was quite upset, and she said, she was asking you, wasn't she? She was like, but I thought that, why were you talking about breaking the hand? Because obviously it was...
I can't remember.
Oh, I remember this.
Otoshitsuki or something, you know, where, and this is the bit where you would strike the hand, and she was saying, why were you saying that? Because I thought Aikido was all about peace and harmony and reconciliation of violence. And you basically were like, well, it is.
But that's interesting thing. First of all, my thinking, I may not say it, but maybe I would have. I probably would have thought, are you sure you're not looking for Buddhism or something? Right? Yeah, Buddhism as in via meditation, via the study of it, which mindfulness is such a factor. Do we have mindfulness? You've got to be present. You've got to be ready, and my goodness, weapons does bring that about, but probably not quite in the way that she idealised something.
I don't know what she was expecting. It was called weapons, and my question is, I mean, how do you learn to reconcile violence if violence is absolutely absent from training? How do you learn to do that?
That there's a story with Chiba Sensei when the London Aikikai that he formed continued by some of his students in Swiss Cottage. Well, back then it was in Swiss Cottage, and for about a year I was teaching there, and it was in a church. You had the bar, as they often do. So it was a Catholic church. You got the entrance and the hallway in the middle, and then on the other side is the hall. So the class was over. Chiba Sensei, we'd finished summer camp, he was visiting, and he'd often pop and teach a couple of sessions in London. So we're walking across, and this silver-haired, quite old gentleman came by, and he is the priest. And Chiba Sensei was introduced to him, and they shake hands, and he was curious. He said, do you really believe that this can reconcile violence, that you can reconcile a truth in that way? And Chiba Sensei had no hesitation, none. Says absolutely he can. And considering his fury and his and of course his reputation, and some genuine and some misinterpreted, and some just outright lies, but the reputation was there, and there he is telling this guy absolutely, and then you see him in action and you scratch your head. But it's almost like talking about communism. I mean, this the world of politics, because what you're talking about is an ideal, and then there's human nature. So you can reconcile. His argument is you can reconcile. It's not going to be easy. You know, you cannot obscure or sidestep human nature. And some people, I mean, you think of it again, back to this era that he came from, and the people that preceded him, the pre-war period was a very violent era. And it being given birth around that era, it was an attempt to reconcile something. It's arguable whether it was ever achieved. You know, there's questions in blogs and posts and stuff from people who've made a lot of effort to study it. And O Sensei himself, it doesn't look like a gentleman. You know, he was a formidable martial artist by the high standards of that era. They amongst themselves recognize that he's of a very special category of martial artist. I think they were aiming for the impossible, and so it's a process, and you get to a certain point, and you know what, when things go wrong, your colleague was this not your colleague, your countryman, Gracie, talking about upholding the honor of your girlfriend in a club, in a disco, and the consequences if you get it wrong. You think about that kind of situation with these guys going that far back. It could be argued that you've just created peace because you did not escalate it. You just knocked a couple of guys out, and you ended something that could have been far bigger, far more consequential than that. And times have changed, you know, and people talk. The language so many people talk about is as though we're in the middle of Detroit in the 60s and 70s, and the explosion of violence is so off the chart. It's the guys who are born and grow up in that environment. They've got a wit and an awareness about them that people in a comfortable environment can never understand. Let's be honest about it. And those are the ones who've survived, who know how to go from A to B without getting into trouble or managing to handle themselves. What we've got is something that keeps you on your toes. Whether it's good enough for that kind of situation is up for debate. It's down to the individual. But when it comes to London, where we are, and most of Europe, where we are still, does it have something to offer? And before it becomes physical, and we do. And so it does have a place. Is it outright combat? It's not. It's self-evident. The individual might be. So the individual, and going back again to the people who created it, outright warrior mentality created this thing. That's already a remarkable step. Us, that's not you. Those people who perpetuate this, lady probably read this, perpetuate this, and Aikido has sort of taken a foothold in that, and it's actually it's gone to bed with it. It's really like heaven on earth stuff. You're talking about sort of enlightenment and harmony. It's like, have you any idea what the work and the effort to get to that is?
Then the same can be said about Zen.
Yes. Remember we had someone who said, I know Zen, now I just haven't figured out Aikido. He didn't figure out Zen and he never figured out Aikido. It's in fact, it's delusional. It's like, and it's also, I would say it's actually racist in a way, because you've diminished 2,500 years, what is it, 2,250, the Buddha. You read his bio, I mean, it's hard to know how accurate it is, but the stuff is around amongst hundreds of millions of people, influenced above and beyond, because it's easy, because after a few sits I understood it. You just reduced East Asian culture to I don't know, 2 and 2 is 4. It's as simple as that. And Aikido, which itself is new, but it's intrinsically linked to the old, and that goes back thousands of years. It goes to China, in fact, if we do that. You can't. And a lot of people do that. He's not alone in this. It's harder than you think, and maybe you're not quite as capable as you think you are. And when those two things meet, and add a fixation, an idea that you're disappointed with because you're not facing up to the reality of what it is. And so then the question is, who's it for? You know. Now, if we water it down, you could make it for everyone. You're healthy, you're fit, you move around, You go back home, you go to the office, you're energized, you feel great. That's pretty good. But you're going to get that anyway. So a little bit later, the novelty's gone. Do we put this on the website? Listen, guys, you're going to do this for a couple of years.
Then
Blah 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 blah. Then you're going to get bored. Now you got to work.
Yeah.
Now you got to work. They say, they used to say, you probably wouldn't know this, Cathy. Third cue, because I don't do the cue systems. I imagine you're not going to do those either. You get to third cue, and that was the marker. If you reach third cue and you took it and you passed it, you're probably going to be around for the long distance. And but that's been said so many times now that I don't trust it anymore. You're going to be around for the long distance when you've been around for the long distance. It sounds like a lazy escape from addressing it. You can't address it.
But the more time passes and the more I'm approaching. Well, in Aikido, I'm still approaching my 30th. But in my 30th year of training. But in martial arts, I have trained more than 30 years. Because I started younger in Chinese martial arts, and then I went into Aikido afterwards. But I've been training in Eastern systems for 35 or something. But the longer I am in it, the more I see and I understand why they did things the way they did it, and certain things are in place in these systems, whether it's how the whole hierarchy of senpai kohai works, and the sensei deishi relationship works, and it's clearly there for a reason, these systems, and they've been tried and tested. Of course, they're not perfect, nothing is, but they're pretty good at keeping people mostly on track for a long time of practice. And you said about the cue. We sometimes discuss, because I even think about not even doing them grades, and you go back to Shoden, Chuden, Okuden.
I seriously consider
and do it like that. It's like, Okuden takes 25 years. Yeah, that's about right. Good luck then. I'll see you in 25 years. Stick around and you get one, maybe. And it's still a maybe, because you don't know if it's actually gonna come to fruition. But it's I don't know. I just see that there is definitely a reason why these things were transmitted the way they were, and it's the other thing that I read recently was an interview with Mokizuchi, Minoru Mokizuchi.
It's going decades back.
Yeah, and he was one of the first pre-war students. I think he joined Ueshiba's dojo in 1930. And he said when Jigoro Kano sent him to Ueshiba, because that's how he got in. Jigoro Kano saw Ueshiba, said, "Oh gosh, this guy, that's real judo." That's Jigoro Kano's words, the founder of judo, saying that's real judo. It's like.
But we don't know what he means by that.
Yeah, and then you can read the interview because it's quite interesting. Mokizuchi's and then Mokizuchi going to Ueshiba. Ueshiba taught in a living room in Tokyo. There wasn't a dojo. It was someone's house. There was a space with 5 people learning from him, 5-6 people, and only a bit later they go into the old. Hombu dojo, not the one that is there now. I think now they've built. Now is Doshu's house where the old one was. Anyway, and then they start still a tiny group of people, and Mokizuchi had to report to Jigoro Kano every month how his learning was going, because Jigoro Kano saw potential in him. So even before going to Ueshiba, he was having that kind of meeting with Kano, those meetings with Kano. And Kano was already worried, and that's the thing that I wanted to bring, because Kano was already worried that playing solely sportive practice, just turning those arts into sport, he wasn't going to go down well. he was already, so 100 years ago, he already saw that's not the art. Competition is not the art. Of course, there's value and there's lots of things you create through sports. And of course, he was aware of that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done what he did. But he knew it wasn't the full picture of his art. So he started this group to study old systems inside the Kodokan. And that's how Mokizushi learns Katori in Shintoryu, because now they had a Katori
Kotori wing in the Kodokan.
Yeah. So they had this society for the practice and study of old systems. So there was Katori, there was spear, there was this, there was all the old stuff, because he knew people were losing touch with those old systems and just wanting to win a competition. And Mokizushi gets scolded a few times by Kano because he goes, "Oh, but I just won 2 competitions." So it's like, so what? You know, what do I care? You know, and telling him off for it. And of course, then, you know, we were talking about that very militarized time and stuff. Even when that happens, and later on, I think Mokizushi brings that question to Ueshiba, and because I think he goes back, and then he tells Ueshiba, "I was demonstrating, you know, how Aikido works, but I can't do it just with Aikido. I had to use other tools from Judo, from Karate. He was a 4th dan in Karate as well." You know, so and they were like, "Well, that's not the point. The point." I think they were so terrified after the war as well that any competition, any you versus me, an atom bomb is the result of it. You know, in the long run. So I think they were all like probably, you know, quite shocked with what they had just experienced. So it's no wonder it also, you know, they took it to that place. And also they needed to make money. You know, you have all these interviews of Kishomaru saying like the dad didn't collect fees, you know, and we had to feed all these dish in the house, and my mom having to cook for all these people, and we had no money, and we had no, because, you know, he would forget to collect the fees, people wouldn't pay him. You know, he was also that kind of artist, not just the martial guy, but he was also, you know.
I knew Nakazono Sensei in the Santa Fe dojo decided to not collect fees anymore, and there was the shrine, and you got your envelope, each according to their means, and you put your money in there and you left it at the shrine. Come and pick up the money later on, and the proceeds from there will pay to keep the venue going, will keep the house going, food on the table, etc. And then he changed it. Then he realised he was going to starve, and it was misunderstood, and also he wasn't valued. The culture that he was in, the more you charge, the better it must be. You know, that kind of thing. So we're talking about intrinsically different sort of approaches. And again, I qualify that there are traditions like this within Western societies as well, but they're in the background. They're not dominant. That is the modern way. In Japan is after the war certainly took on that mantle as well. You know, it's all modern corporate, commercial, etc. So with all this in mind, and this is pretty, you know, we're going way back, and we're also going to sort of the pinnacle. You know, these great guys and everything. How do you you know, where do you want to see Gyodokan go?
Well, I would like to see that we are able to provide training every day. You know, I would like that.
Cathy?
Same.
You're willing to pick it up?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, I also teach in your dojo as well, and so, I mean, at the moment I'm teaching or training, or teaching and training 6 days a week. But certainly kind of, I would like to see our current students kind of developing to the stage where maybe they can teach a bit as well. I think it would be. I think it's important actually to have a good children's program. I was thinking about the pilot that we did recently, and we had everybody joined. Everyone decided to join in September from the pilot. Apart from, there were 3 teenage girls, and they were all friends with each other, and they were very nice girls, like very, very lovely girls. But they were, all 3 of them very pretty. You could tell they're quite trendy girls and confident. In some ways, confident, but self-conscious, very self-conscious. And what really struck me was, and I was saying to Ivan after teaching these children's classes, actually they struck me as incredibly vulnerable, because just the way that they conducted themselves around the dojo, very like they're kids, sure, but there was a real naivety in a way about it, which actually the other kids didn't have. The other kids were quite sharp to pick up. I mean, already in the second class, the kids were like, helping to get the chairs out, putting the mats out and things like that. And these girls were a bit more distracted, I guess. But just coming back, they obviously do dance and things like that. They were in good shape. But there was something very limp about, like, just, showing them how to do a decent ski. To be honest, it needed a lot of work. It was you got the impression that they were quite soft and needed a lot of training to become...
Maybe a little pampered, maybe?
Possibly. And what was interesting was one of their dads was watching the class, and the impression I got from him was that he wanted his daughter to do it. Because, I'm there teaching the class, I'm chucking James around, who's much bigger than me, and for him, he probably realises that, we talk about we're not living in the Bronx and whatever, but London is still a dangerous place for teenage girls. It can be. And I thought, this is what these girls need. Maybe not Aikido, but something, some kind of martial art.
But something that may come through Aikido.
Yeah.
Awareness, resilience.
Yes.
The physical and mental conditioning.
Yeah.
Is part and parcel rather than specifically combat.
Yeah. And I said to Ivan, like, I think they're the least likely to stay, and I was right. But I thought, but they probably are the ones that would benefit the most if they did. They would have been difficult to teach. I can tell, having been a teacher, I can tell.
So we're saying, really, look, come on, folks. This stuff is a little idiosyncratic. It's unusual compared to the others, but there's intrinsic value in it. And if you can just allow yourself for that to seep in and get the benefit, but also you've got to give a little. You've got to give to it. It's not just I've paid my fees, teach me. You have to engage. You've got to draw something out of others, and you've got to draw something out of yourself, and create something that I think the word that was always used is if you're not a budoka, a martial, hardcore in a sense, then substance. Substance meaning it's got a little bit of that, maybe a fair bit of that. All depends on the individual, but something that has value, has gravity to it, and you obviously physical, mental benefits are there, but also you value it and you want to help it grow, not only yourself but through the dojo that you're training in, and it takes time. I think, and that's the difficult part, because in my website and I've seen yours, there's nothing there that refers to time, and this is going to take time, folks. It's look, check it out, give it a go, be open to it, try to check out any presumption at the door and see it for what it is, or at least try to give that a go, and maybe you'll find something that's far better than you. You know, the lady getting frustrated, annoyed, and even maybe a little upset. You know, no, wow, this is better. Ah, no, this is not for me. At least we know. At least you know. Or you carry on perpetuating strange ideas and strange overlays on top of something that really needs I don't know about a clean slate. There's no such thing. But an openness is the closest thing you get to it. We always come back to this openness, authenticity, openness, qualities that the marketing world doesn't really like. I mean, I say that, and maybe the big boys in the marketing world will tell us no. A product you believe in, you're authentic, you're open to your clients. They may believe the same thing from their point of view. I really don't know. I'm too caught up in the you know. But I think we've covered it really. I think we never come up with an answer because there isn't one.
No.
But I suppose we have high expectations, and I think we shouldn't lose that.
Yeah.
But thanks for your contribution, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
And let's go back to class soon.
See what the next few months brings, I guess.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What kind of tea is this? Bismarck?